Recently, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited North Korea. The visit yielded an interesting mutual defense agreement, sort of like a Cold War alliance treaty. This agreement has not really been discussed from an Indian interest perspective, so let's do that in this conversation. Firstly, the revival of a mutual defense agreement or some sort of an alliance agreement, particularly in the context of threats of war, can potentially bring NATO into Asia. This is something that has long been talked about, and India is not necessarily comfortable with this idea of developing a Cold War sort of system within Asia. Second, the agreement has a component of providing military supplies to each other, even during peacetime or during threats of war. Now, Russia is obviously engaged in a war in Ukraine, and it needs military supplies. Its defense industrial base is not able to keep up. From an Indian point of view, when one thinks about this is a challenge. Russia is a big supplier of arms and ammunition to India. And if it requires support military supplies from North Korea, what is the sustainability of India's supplies coming from Russia? Finally, this agreement obviously complicates India's engagement with Russia and India's relationship with the United States in that context. So frictions in that regard are going to continue. The one final point that one needs to keep in mind is that interestingly, this deal is also not welcome in Beijing. So in a strange confluence of events, India and China seem to potentially have a similar view, at least from the perspective of their interests, of an action that's taken by Russia. Does this mean that there will be bonhomie between India and China? Of course not. That relationship is fraught with a whole set of complications. But it's interesting that at least in some areas, particularly with regard to the actions of Russia, you might end up having India and China see eye to eye.